The European Union has for a long time insisted on democratic freedoms being improved in Belarus. It did not really happen in the past years, but as we see now, President Lukashenko was invited several times to attend the European Eastern Partnership Summit in Brussels, and then he was also invited to Vienna, and he's coming here on the 12th of November. So does it indicate any change in the EU approach to Belarus, to its elites, and if yes, why, and if no, why not?
Oh yeah, it does indicate some change, and the change happened, roughly speaking, 4 years ago, when the logic of geopolitical regional stability prevailed over the logic of democratization of the European Eastern neighbors, in a way. From 2015, 2016, the Eastern neighbors of the EU were started to be appreciated by the EU, or valued not just because of how close they are to the democracy standards, but also by how big a contributor they are to the regional stability. And in this regard, Belarus suddenly became an A-level student because it provided mediation services with regards to conflict in Ukraine, because it took very, unexpectedly neutral line on behavior and approach towards the conflict in Ukraine, conflict between Russia and the West in general, and this was very much appreciated in this new configuration of values, And also besides that, Belarus has made some steps towards at least limiting the level of repressions, of visible repressions. For example, we don't have any political prisoners anymore, and this is likely to continue to be so. And for European Union, in these circumstances, it appeared to be enough to at least somewhat moderate its approach, or at least soften its approach towards Belarus. It's not to say that Brussels forgot about human rights. It still insists on death penalty moratorium and other sensitive issue in relations, so still insists on some human rights progress to be done. However, this progress became a parallel track, and this dialogue became a parallel track to other more pragmatic economic areas of relations, where, in other words, human rights are not anymore the obstacle to developing relations on other topics, other issues.
Okay, so how about then how Russia plays into this new type of relationship with the European Union? Does it object it? Does it feel that Belarus is somehow drifting away, or there are also some conflicts between Russia and Belarus right now in the economic sector? So how do you see that?
Well, of course, the general trend of Belarus becoming more friendly with its Western neighbors, European Union, United States, is something that irritates Russia when it happens, on a stable basis, when it's like on a 5-year, 6-year process. And that's what basically was going on. It's not like that Russia is upset with some particular Lukashenko visit to Vienna or something like this. It's the general trend that definitely upsets them. However, I think we sometimes overestimate the degree of Russian irritation, because in the end they are quite smart to understand that European doors will not be open for Lukashenko. He is still an authoritarian leader who is not going to be accepted as equal partner by the West in any way, except for some security, mutual, pragmatic, mutually beneficial areas of dialogue. It is not that Belarus can repeat the Ukrainian way of leaving the Russian sphere of influence and they joining the European integration process. This is not on the table for Belarus, and that is why the frustration of Russia has been quite moderate, and most of the disagreements in relations between Belarus and Russia have to do with their bilateral dynamics, with the revision of the whole model of their economic relations. It's not necessarily the consequence of new Belarusian attempts to flirt with the West. It's rather the other way around. When the problems with Russia became so pressing and urgent for Minsk, that it once again decided to make a more sustainable effort to reach out to the West.
So you mentioned Ukraine. Belarus now is the platform for dialogue, more or less, between Russia, Ukraine, and also within the OSCE framework. They have trilateral contact group that also meets in Minsk. So does Belarus have this perspective of becoming this neutral grounds in the region where different parties can meet and resolve their issues, or to what extent can it be in this sense independent and really neutral?
I'm skeptical about this image that sometimes Minsk is trying to build upon itself, the Eastern Switzerland idea, because in the end, Belarus is not a neutral country. It is part of Russian-led military alliances, collective security treaty organization, and union state. It influences the perception of Belarus by Ukraine, by Baltic neighbors, by Poland, by the US. They cannot view Belarus as a properly neutral state, like Austria was, for example. However, Belarus, by making constantly these initiatives, these peace initiatives, these negotiations initiatives, Belarus is not necessarily hoping for them to become true in the foreseeable future. This is part of the of the broader process of image building, in a way, of positioning yourself. Belarus wants to show to the whole world then that here are the Russians with their agenda, confrontational agenda, and here we are, a separate actor with our peacekeeping stability agenda, and you should differentiate between us and them. That's basically the message Belarus is trying to send, with all of its sometimes overly ambitious Helsinki II initiatives and things like this. Belarusian success in this endeavor depends not on Belarus only. It very much, or I would say to far larger degree, depends on the readiness of the key world stakeholders to come to the table to negotiate. Choosing a venue for this dialogue is secondary. We don't see any political will on behalf of strategic players like Russia, US, European Union, China, or whoever it may be, to generally come to the table, to agree on the terms of this coming to the table. And therefore, it is not just premature to discuss the Minsk's opportunities in this regard. It's just, I think, the wrong way of looking into the Minsk's initiatives, because so far it's not about when the next Helsinki summit will take place in Minsk. It's more about what Minsk wants to convey with positioning itself this way.